Hello and welcome back to Redirecting. I'm going to be doing something a little bit different on my channel. I know that a lot of channels already have tea time. What I want to do, however, is I want to signify for you what I'm going to be talking about by the cup that I use. Now, I won't do this in every video because some videos will be just topics that don't warrant it or it's not required for. But in this particular video, you will know what I'm talking about by the cup that I'm using to drink from. It's very cold outside, so right now I have some ginger tea sweetened with honey. And looking at my cup, you can tell what the subject is. I'm going to be talking about a black and white issue. Okay, a black and white issue. This is a story that was suggested to me by a brother in the comment section. He says because he doesn't have a platform, and this is an area he's familiar with, he wanted someone to talk about it. So I'm going to talk about it. Again, my cup will signify, like I said, I won't do it on every video, but this cup will signify when I'm going to be talking about black and white issues, okay? Black and white issues. Stay warm, family. It's cold out there today. A lot of the country was hit with a lot of snow, and so we are feeling that winter. I can't call it breeze. We're experiencing that winter freeze. So a lot of us are warming up with tea. But let me get into this subject. Okay. There's an article on the Chicago Tribune. It says letters containing racist slurs were sent to 3 Evanston Skokie District schools. Now you can guess that these schools represent a high black population. Okay, and so this is why this is of concern to this brother who wanted me to talk about this. So I'm gonna check into this and share with you what I have found out. It says Evanston police are investigating letters containing racist slurs that were sent to 3 Evanston Skokie schools in recent weeks. Officials confirmed on Monday. We're investigating. We don't know anything more, said Police Commander Ryan Glue on Monday. School officials sent emails to district families on November 8th informing them of racist and hateful letters that were sent via the U.S. mail to Kingsley Elementary, Park School, and the JEH Education Center, and to an email, according to the email sent by Interim Superintendent Phil Erdhart and Heidi Winstrom, the 3 letters received by the school officials all read, "White N-word matter," according to the mail, according to the email. These are clear acts of racism, and this offensive and extremely hateful language has no place in our schools. In District 65, we will not tolerate anything less than kindness and respect for all members of our community, the interim superintendent wrote. Glue declined to comment on what leads police may have, if postmarks indicate where the letters were mailed from, or if the messages were tied to any specific thing that happened at the schools. This is not the first recent incident involving racial slurs at District 65, and all schools will participate in a dedicated professional learning opportunity on this topic during the 2019-2020 school year. Okay, I'm going to stop right there with the article. But what I wanted to say, okay, it goes on to reference other things in the article a little further along. I'm going to read a little bit more of this article just to bring more context to what I want to talk about. It says, last year, Lincolnwood Elementary School Principal Max Weinberg wrote in an October 2018 letter that portions of the student body, specifically black students, were made to feel unwelcome. In the letter, written the day after the massacre at a synagogue in Pittsburgh, Weinberg said, "I have heard and received information that students had been called the N-word and other disparaging epithets." Okay. Former Superintendent Paul Gorin said at this time last year that an increased number of racist comments had been heard not just at Lincolnwood but at many schools around the district. The incidents were not isolated to one grade or class. In addition to the insults listed in Weinberg's letter, Gorin said last year he had heard of Hispanic students being challenged by the potential of a wall and the southern border of the United States. Again, this is one of those black and white issues. It's amazing to me how one very important fact is left out of a lot of these things, that the perpetrators of these racist attacks, see, they try to, from time to time, they'll try to drop in racism and attach it to a so-called black person. When a black person responds to racism, like there was an incident where a black sports player, I think it was a football player, he called someone a cracker. Now, they have, there's one comedian in particular, he's a white comedian, he says when you call them crackers, it takes them back to the days when they owned slaves. Cracking the whip, that's what that means. And so they, to try to deflect that from the fact that this country has a real problem with racism, they will try to say that stuff like that is racism, when they know that racism is really a systematic thing, and it's not just a black person calling a white person a cracker. Come on now. Racism is a system that has been put in place to keep black people down. And I'm not going to get off into that again because that's not what I'm trying to talk about here in this particular video. I'm trying to talk about how in the school system there is a lot of racial discrimination coming from the top even. Teachers, you see, there is a toxic environment already created in schools. And to try to work through that, being a child, I don't like to say a person of color. I don't like that, you know, to be a so-called black person, okay? Not that that's any better, but usually when they say people of color, they're trying to include everyone that is not white, okay? When many times you will have other people of color, whether they're Asian or Latino or Mexican, who will do the same type of discriminatory practices against blacks. See, with black suffering, they like to try to lump everybody in together. They never like to give us our own separate category. So now civil rights is not just about the civil rights movement that we've all come to know, but now civil rights is even that of gays and lesbians and other people as well, and even women who feel like they have been discriminated against. So everyone's able to grab hold of our suffering and persecution, and they actually rise to the top with their protest, whereas those who we've come to know the civil rights movement to be attached to have sunk to the bottom. In other words, the civil rights of so-called black people is still at the bottom, whereas the civil rights of a transgender has bubbled all the way to the top. Okay, and so with this situation here in the school system, it's very serious these days. If there are threatening letters and racist letters being sent to a school, that's not to be taken lightly, family. After all, we're talking about a black and white issue. The level of hate in this country for our people is so off the charts that people like to make fun of it, like to pretend as if we don't know what we're talking about, as if we're making a mountain out of a molehill, as if it really truly don't exist. You even have so-called black people who want us to just be quiet about it. If you stop talking about it, it'll stop happening. us talking about what's going on in this country is not going to stop whoever this was who sent those letters to that elementary school. Okay? It's not going to stop those who continue to victimize so-called black people throughout this country and this world. It's not going to stop them if we stop talking about it. It's just going to show how docile we are. Now, I received an email from a Gentile about blacks and docility. I may try to tackle the subject because there are some elements that I feel need to be talked about and explained, because many times people, they want to try to pretend like they don't know that we have a real struggle. The way we respond to these things does need to be dealt with, okay? But many times our response is based on what we feel we have the ability to achieve, you see. So that's another thing that I may talk about, but from a perspective that I understand, and not from the perspective of a person who is putting a label on us unjustly or unfairly because they're not able to sympathize with our side of how things are happening. I know how to see things from many different angles. I know how to see it from the angle of how other people view us, and I know how to see it from the angle of how we should be doing things, and from the angle of how we are doing things, right? And even beyond that, there are other things to consider. But again, back to this, our situation is this. And it's not going to be solved with simple videos, because many times my videos won't even reach the people that need to be reached. Now, I am thankful for the testimonies that I've received over the years for various things I've talked about on this channel. Some people have opened up their eyes about white supremacy. Some have opened up their eyes about racism and Christianity, growing their own food, raising their children, how we should deal with our husbands and our relationships with our individual families. So people have, shared their testimonies on how this channel has changed their thinking and their lives, and how they move about or navigate in this world. So I'm grateful for that. However, I do know that only a remnant will hear you on any given subject. And so back to the school issue, for me, the solution will always be to educate our own, whether it's through homeschool or through a network of people working together to educate our children or our population. Because education is not just for children, it's for adults as well. You see, there is so much we can learn from one another if we are willing to listen and be taught, okay? Anyway, that is the subject on this. For that school district, I'm glad that they are taking this seriously, because there are a lot of cases. I see spiders, y'all. I'm not one of those who has arachnophobia, but I am always aware when they're around. Whenever you get this cold weather, look for spiders. They're trying to come in out of the cold. But anyway, I'm one of those who just believes that we should be more proactive in educating our own children, our own families, and that when we don't take this stuff serious and we put it in other people's hands, there's only so much complaining we can do. I feel like we are not proactive enough in trying to advance ourselves beyond the point that we are now. Okay, so much to look at, so many things to consider. But I wanted to cover this story for this young man. To the parents of those school districts, don't take this lightly. There have been school shootings. People have lost their lives, and for this to be racially motivated, this is a person who doesn't mind letting you know that they don't like your little black children, that they hate them. Whenever someone sends hateful, racist messages, this is a person who's sitting back, pondering, thinking, and saying within themselves, why are these children in our schools? They don't want you around their children, you see. And they are willing to violate federal law and send something through the mail informing you of this. No telling who's behind this. Many times I believe things come from the top, if you know what I mean. But we've got to be more proactive in our own protection, family. With that, I will say, shalom. to ring the bell to be notified of new uploads on this channel, and also comment, share, like, and subscribe.